Hi, John. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Dan, and Happy New Year to everybody that's listening to us. 2024, something about that even number just feels better.
Yeah, it's kind of smooth, like twos and fours exactly. It's true.
Yeah.
So, John, I had an idea. Well, we were due to record with Wolfgang today, and he booked something else. So I said, why don't we do a quick review of look back over what we did in 2023 and talk about what's coming up in 2024. It could be a good kind of casual chat. Put it out as a bonus episode. So I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a busy year, and we've had a lot of great guests. And also, I was just telling Dan, I just thank you to the audience that's joining our LinkedIn group, sharing out and posting, and people reaching out to us. As we had said before, LinkedIn's a good place to kind of reach out. If you go to the International School Podcast LinkedIn page, you can message us, and we watch it quite closely. So if you have
Yeah.
anything to share, don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Yeah, you were just saying we've had quite a few people joining the page or following the page, which is great.
Yeah, and we have people that are joining the podcast. So really appreciate all the support. And, definitely if you have any thoughts or topics that resonate or things that you think we should be covering, we do. Right, Dan, we're kind of focused on the international schools market, and
Yeah,
market's the wrong word, maybe community and I
community.
think,
Yeah.
yeah. And so definitely anything that falls into that category, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We really appreciate all the support. It's
Yeah,
always nice to hear from people.
definitely, John. One thing I think I'd like to do is a few. I mean, this is maybe a bit niche. You can tell me what you think, but I really like. We've done the tech director roundtables. I was actually thinking to do a few specific ones. Like I've got in mind now doing a Saudi one because I know quite a few people in Saudi, a EU one, and then talk about. First of all, what it's like to live in these places and get into all that and teach and a family. But then the tech stuff's kind of interesting to me. Like, 'cause everywhere's got different privacy laws. People have different
Absolutely.
struggles of getting hardware. I mean, I know it's not kind of, a lot of our audience are tech staff. I think I would guess half are, but I'm curious what you think about that as an idea for some episodes.
I like it. I think always the panels do very well. We just had we recorded not too recently digital learning coaches. We've done a couple on AI. So I think those definitely resonate. One thing that I mean, if I was looking through the episodes, is one thing that we don't do a good job of is student voice. And that's something I'd like to work on a bit, where we get international school students speaking up.
Sure.
Vox just did this wonderful 17-minute documentary that Ben Sheridan shared. And it's basically kids talking how they use the AI and how teachers see it. And there are just some very different perspectives and different feelings and different approaches on what it is and how it impacts. And I did think so often we are all the business that we do, all the work we do is actually to support students. And I don't
Yeah.
think my own self-criticism is I'm not reaching out enough to get student guests. So that's something that I'd like to work on this year.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the good thing is, I mean, we went to every 2 weeks. Originally a long time ago, we did it once a week, which was too much. But the good thing is, we've actually ended up doing quite a few bonus episodes. If you look through the year, we've actually done quite a few extras, like this one, for example. So we've sometimes
Yeah.
been
And
weekly.
you were reminding us that we should count them as an honest episode, because
Yeah,
on
well,
our Apple feed and on the Spotify feed,
I'm going to
it's
speak to
just
Jane.
about, yeah.
Our editor
Dan
Jane.
wants the numbers to go up. Yeah. So we've done.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Because we're on 116, but then if you count the bonus episodes, we'd be over 120. So it's getting some good numbers now.
Yeah, it's always good. And last year, I remember I really enjoyed having this conversation at the same time, actually, just to
Yeah,
go off.
exactly.
So
Yeah, it's
I
always a
think
good
it's
time
important.
to reflect. I'm just back from 3 weeks in the Alps, which was amazing in
How
Austria.
was the snow?
It was there was two really big dumps when it was amazing. I got up super early and great powder, and then it kind of got a bit, it kind of rained a bit. There was still full coverage on all the slopes, but it was artificial snow as well. So,
Yeah.
and just as we left yesterday, we were recording this on Sunday the 7th of January, it was snowing like crazy. I was devastated to be leaving, but and I was just talking to Wolfgang. We should I'm definitely going to come to Switzerland in Jan, and we should try to get a Saturday if you fancy a Saturday ski trip to go up to the mountain somewhere.
Yeah, I have the honor and joy of going on ski camps with 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds here in January. So we'll have to make sure I'm not with 100 kids skiing. So
Yeah,
the school that
definitely.
I'm involved with, they do these ski camps, which is great.
So, John, you were saying about in Switzerland, some of the lower altitude ski areas are being closed.
Not closed, but they're definitely reconfiguring on how to generate incomes because they can't generate incomes just on that one season. So they're trying to diversify mountain biking, hiking, all those other type of events that take place, you know. And I think this whole climate change really amplifies how you have to be that much more adaptable and being able to think very differently than just expecting, you know, that big cash cow of ski season. I think those days are over.
Yeah, it's interesting. So where we go, we have a small apartment in a place called Rauris, which is in Salzburgerland in Austria. I've been going there for a long time. I think I've mentioned on the pod I used to work in a ski school there, just part time in the school holidays. And there's a big summer skiing area called the Kitzsteinhorn in Kaprun, which is a big glacier, and that's just closed this year. It's been open my whole life, and they said they're closing permanently now, and it's not because of climate change or anything. It's still operational. They just can't make the money. There just isn't the money coming in to operate a ski area in the summer there. So it's closing, which is kind of a real shame. You know, it's been great to go and get a couple of days skiing in the middle of July. It's always kind of a bizarre and quite cool thing to do.
Yeah. It's funny, these existential threats, you know, climate change, and some people say AI and cybersecurity and all these things,
Yeah.
they just seem far more part of the narrative. And it was interesting. I was listening to a podcast from this British orthopedic surgeon that had volunteered for 3 weeks to go into Gaza
Yeah.
and work in the hospitals as much as you can, considering the situation. And the BBC presenter, podcast facilitator, was asking, you know, we've tried over the last 6 weeks trying to get you to talk, and you've always said you don't do interviews. Why did you suddenly decide today? And one thing that really stuck out for me, he was saying he's never seen the level of cruelty and warfare as in these last 18 months,
Yeah, it's really bad. So
which
there's
is interesting.
it is terrible from an international school angle. There's an international school in Gaza, the American International School, which I knew the old IT director. It used to be part of a group called ESOL, which is based out of Dubai, and we work Apps Events, my company, we support them. But it got taken over by USAID, which I believe is some US government funded NGO. And I don't know what's happened to everyone at the school. I know the school's been bombed, from what I understand. I don't know if anyone's been killed or who's alive. So yeah, if anyone knows anyone from the American International School of Gaza, get in touch. I've looked around online, but I couldn't find any information about what's happened to all the people who work there. So please let us know if you know anything.
And so had you gone to visit the school?
No, I've never been. I've been to the West Bank years ago, a long time ago. I've been to Ramallah, I've been to Bethlehem, East Jerusalem, been to quite a few places in the West Bank, never been to Gaza. I almost went there. There was a Google Chromebook thing, which was almost going to happen, and I was going to go on it together with Google. This is a few years, and it never happened. I'm not sure why it didn't happen, but no, never been. Have you been there?
No, I have never been to that area of the world. No, no, never. And yeah, interesting. I mean, it's so complex, and so yeah, it's just, you know, you read the news, and we talked about this, Dan, that, you know, I think both of us kind of are avoiding the news as much as possible because it's just not always that positive. And somebody was just reflecting and saying, yeah, maybe you can't make changes around the world, but we need to remind ourselves to be kind and empathetic just to the people around you, and kind of that idea of a ripple effect. And I love that person reminded me again of how important it is, even in our own small context or in the small area that we might be, the school community or even our friend group or professional learning circle, is that you can actually have an impact for good by making sure you're sharing that positiveness in that small circle.
Yeah, definitely. It's we probably shouldn't get too much into the whole Israel Gaza thing, because I think,
No.
I don't want to get cancelled.
No, and
Um,
I think this is not what our podcast is. But the thing is, I think, Dan, as you're saying, is it's there. It's something you have to engage with, and wherever you are on the different spectrums of beliefs and emotions, those have to be honored by everybody and yourself. So I'm with
Yeah,
you on that.
especially as
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I mean, just a personal, there's an international school there. Almost everyone who listens to this works for an international school or works together with international schools, and there's people just like you who are there.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Interesting. Dan, it was interesting. We had a few talks about branding and
yeah,
how organizations brand themselves, and that's really we've had guests. We've actually had a couple guests. We had guests from on admissions. We've done 2 episodes. One with David and Sue, and another one with members from Faria. And just tell us a bit about the branding, because I think that's so important for an organization like you. And you and I had kind of a conversation about how do you recalibrate if you have to brand, and
yeah,
just
it's interesting. So for people who don't know, I founded an organization called Abs Events, and we're a Google for Education partner working with international schools. And I've been doing it. John was my first ever customer. That's how we met. So we've done.
nice.
I've been doing it for a long time. And for almost all of the history of Apps Events, we've been predominantly a PD, professional development organization. So doing training. We started off running Google Summits, like with John. We've run them a lot of all around the world. Africa, Asia, Middle East. South America, North America. I mean, really, it's been amazing. And we, run a lot of technical training and stuff. But this year has been a big year, talking about this year, because we've kind of refocused more to get actually into what I was doing at the very beginning when I first met you, which is more technical services. So we are, doing much more. So Google has a whole administrator console. So we're getting more involved in doing Google remote administration. So we work with a lot of schools who people know: International School of Amsterdam, International School of Kuala Lumpur, a few schools in Saudi, United Nations International School Hanoi, and we kind of are supporting the admins. So we're supporting. We have an ongoing private support group for the Google administrators. We do regular training. We do a full security audit every year, and then for some of the schools, we actually take it a step further, and we are an admin. We're an additional Google admin for schools that don't have the resource, or we might do interim cover. So it's been a big change from being predominantly PD to predominantly tech, Google tech support. And anyone listening to this, we're still doing PD. It's not like we've stopped it. It's just not our focus. The COVID changed things, and for me, it's been a new lease of life. Because I've been doing the same thing for a while. My background's in tech as a tech guy, and I like getting it's got me super excited about it again. So but then the branding thing is like, well, Apps Events, it's got events in the name, and I was thinking of changing it. And I had a really good chat with you, John, last week, where you gave me some good feedback that probably it's not the name that's the main issue. The main issue is we haven't communicated this is the direction we're going. And like you said, events could also be security events. It's got some technical meaning as well, and that's a really good point. And we're going to look at what you suggested, maybe speaking to an agency, how to rebrand the messaging, because it's you and me speak all the time, and if you're not clear about it, then no one else is clear about it for sure, because
Yeah.
you know more than anybody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting what you're bringing up is this idea of communications, because I think sometimes we make the assumption, we message out, you have your website,
Yeah,
but I think sometimes one doesn't realize that sometimes the message is not getting out. And we were actually in the conversation, I was just saying that, an example is like Apple. It's an apple, right?
yeah,
It's a fruit. But nobody thinks of Apple, the company, anything to do with the fruit, apart from maybe the logo. But
yeah,
so I think it's also the messaging, the way you create the ecosystems that get people to remind themselves what you do and what services. And I think, the issue and the focus that you have on technology, security, admin console, and cybersecurity is so critical. And I think one of the maybe pinch points for many schools is that for them to manage that on their own without a third party support can be quite challenging, often because they're just not the human beings in the department to be able to do that job fully as they're juggling other things. And the complexity of it and having a third party come in and support you, I think is just such a really smart idea. And I think, and you can attest to this better than I can, more and more schools are looking at partnering with other organizations like yourself to support them in running the administration, doing the security, instead of trying to hire 5 new people, which of course financially for most schools is not possible. So I think there's an interesting opportunity and also interesting relationship building between schools and providers like yourself that have created the community. There's the admin console training, and then you also people can contract you to have a 1-year contract, and you kind of hold their hand and maintain things. Have you noticed a greater demand for that, Dan, since
Yeah,
you've
well,
switched?
it's a new service, and it's ongoing. We said from the beginning, it's quarter to quarter, month to month, whatever you want, year to year. Whatever. We're not going to hold anyone to anything. We want them to want to stay. So far, touch wood, everyone has. There's been demand. It's been, it's interesting for this is kind of more business talk for people interested in business. It's kind of a new product, so it's not like let's say you're selling a learning management system or you're selling training. It's something that already exists, and then you just kind of you choose us above someone else. This is actually kind of a new thing, which makes it a bit harder because people. But the reason people are going for it is, we've got a few really high-end Google admins. Certified Google Cloud certified everything. Peter Horner, Charlie Love, a few other people we work with, and so. The point is, you could hire someone at a school, but then you're hiring an entry-level person, training them up, and you obviously every time you hire, you're taking a gamble, but you're not hiring. To hire someone like Peter Horner would cost you a lot. So we're giving the high-end support, but on a fractional basis. Because you don't need it every minute of the day, but you do need it. I mean, every month. I mean, one of the things I'll mention later. With the big success for us this year was our community. We've got a AppScience Google admin community. It's all completely free. Anyone listening to this, if you're involved in technology for an international school, you can join. But we do a monthly call where we go through all the new features of just on the admin side. We're not talking about all the new. We do talk about some of the stuff in classroom, and every month it's we're going pretty fast, and it's 30 to 45 minutes every month of just new features. So schools are realizing that it's not like the client server days where you might get an upgrade every year or two to your Microsoft server, system. It's just an ongoing thing. And so that's why I think we're getting some interest in this, because, it's just having someone else who knows your system. Because if you have staff that leave and come and go, I think it's, it's great. We're starting to get some traction. It's just a matter of getting the word out,
You bring up a good point. I think nowadays a lot of the updates and the new features, I mean, sometimes I go into Google Drive and I'm taking, I've taken educator level 1 and 2. I'm a Google trainer, but things just show up and I'm like, whoa, I didn't even know about that,
Yeah, all
And
the
so
time.
I think having a digest of that is really helpful, especially on the admin side where you might have 1,000 or 500 users. And that's a lot to manage and to be always in tune with the latest. I think that digest is a great idea.
Yeah, definitely. And so the other thing we do is, we have a support group, but we can jump from text chat to video chat, and actually, we're doing more than support. We're writing GAM scripts. Like, if you want someone's scripts to write to do an integration or to do exports to BigQuery or whatever, or Looker Studio, we're actually doing the tech stuff for them. So it's great. I've got a new lease of life. I think you can tell I'm more enthusiastic about this than I have
Yeah,
been.
definitely.
I was on a bit of a downward spot. COVID just like killed the PD stuff. Well, it was miserable for a lot of reasons, and this has been great. But that COVID, it was actually an unexpected benefit of COVID. It kind of pushed me to move in this direction. So something good has actually come out of it, really.
So Dan, do you feel that the PD is something, of course, that you're still doing? Because I know you're working. You have a group of trainers that are
Yeah.
active, and you see them on social media. They do some great work supporting schools. That's still there, but really, for you, you feel that now this focus of admin support and the technical community, there is maybe a greater demand. It makes more sense for your organization.
Definitely greater demand. The demand, in my opinion, people can message us what they think. I've seen the demand for PD has gone down significantly. I mean, it obviously stopped completely in COVID, I mean, we put a lot of free content on YouTube, but really there was nothing happening, and it hasn't come back to the level it was before. I think specifically with Google for education, I think part of it is it's been around for a while now. People have maybe, they've been using it for 10 years in some cases. It's not as kind of, from an end user, from a teacher point of view, it's not as novel. There's people know about it. I think there is a demand, but it's just, and we could just focus on it. Like, we could do it, but it's the problem is, from a business point of view, you're starting again every time you do some training. Like, you do some training, and then you've got to find another piece of training. Whereas, what we're doing now is we build an ongoing relationship with the school IT director. And it means you can staff up your team. It means you can plan for the future, because it's not always a case of, we ran a lot of summits, and the summits were like, it's summit's great, but it's a lot of work for one event, and you might get a lot of people and you make some money, or you might lose money on it. It's like we lost money a few times.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's a tough
And I
business,
think, as you said, COVID really changed the landscape, especially for a lot of consultants whose bread and butter was face-to-face or summits or conferences. And I think a lot of people have had to recalibrate and reinvent PD. The other thing is, there is so much PD out there. If you go on LinkedIn or any of these education groups, so many organizations are providing PD certifications here and there. We were just talking to Nancy and Helen from ECIS, and how many other organizations are doing the same thing that they are. So I think and also schools have suddenly realized, oh, I don't need to bring a consultant, and we can actually do some PD. And this is something that last year I periodically would travel for conferences and presenting at conferences. And now it's really shifted, where people are saying, hey, could you do 2 hours on a Saturday morning PD on this topic? And that's something that I've seen much more of. And that's something that I've been excited about, being able to provide PD. And I think we're much more comfortable in a Zoom environment. We understand, or a Google Meet, we understand how to structure the PD so it's engaging. People are, really feeling that there's a return in their investment. They have opportunities to connect with people. There's conversation. I think we're just much more savvy than just messaging out one way.
Yeah, definitely. Have you seen, I mean, in your experiences, do you think schools are doing less PD, or do you think that's just a post-COVID trend, or do you think it's moving to online, moving to shorter? They're doing internally. Like, do you think the volume of like people getting an external PD has decreased?
I think the external PD, I would say it's changed, where more often the PD is taking place. Instead of flying in the consultant for 5 days, you might have a 1-year contract with a consultant, and periodically they will come monthly and do a 2-hour book study, or they might do work with different cohorts. I think that, and people are really comfortable with that. There's, of course, cost is always the big thing.
Yeah.
I think also many more schools are creating their own PD. I think so often we're always going outside to get expertise, when if you're in a school with 200 teachers or even 50 teachers, there's so much expertise in the room, and saying, okay, why don't we leverage the expertise that we have within our own community? So I think that's also happening. I think it's, I think people just have to be adaptable. You have to be much more agile. The AI thing, everybody's doing PD on AI. I mean, it's like every time you turn around, there's another PD on AI. And I get it. It's the flavor of the month. So I understand. So it's interesting. I'm curious how that whole AI conversation and the focus on AI, what this year might look like, because what you're seeing now, every provider is throwing something AI into their ecosystem. That I have this AI, we have this AI. And so what's interesting is that, having looked at many of them, what I'm always noticing, they're basically using ChatGPT engines, So I personally have found having a ChatGPT-4 account, where I can create my own customized search and upload documents, and have a database, a data set that I have generated from my own documents or my own presentations, and then connect that with the data sets that ChatGPT-4 has been really powerful. I find much better than a lot of these other, education AIs or lesson planning AIs. I find ChatGPT-4 just so powerful. And especially now that you have much more personalizations and customizations that you can do. I think that model is very powerful.
Definitely. And now I think DALL-E is now integrated, isn't it? So you can do image creation in ChatGPT-4 as well.
Oh yeah, and you can do coding. There's kind of a panel that you go into, and there are these menus of things that you can do. And what I've created is I teach children between the ages of 3 and 11 makerspace and digital skills. So I'm basically uploading all the presentations, all the lesson plans I've done, and that sits there. And as I'm trying to create new lessons, it's referring to past work that I've done, and at the same time going out to the data sets that it has. Very powerful, very powerful.
Definitely. So, John, you mentioned what you were doing. It would be great to have an update. Obviously, you've been 2 years now at International School of Geneva. How long have you been there?
Yeah, 2 years. I've been back in the classroom. I've really, really enjoyed it. It's been so good. I think when you're in leadership and you're working with teachers, and often you're managing teachers and you're helping them in their professional journey and they're in the classroom, there's a disconnect. And you have all these great ideas, but it's 2 or 3 layers before it gets to the kids, because you're not the one. And now being in the classroom, I've just loved it. Working with young kids, with Code Week, we did a lot around robotics, but actually what we did was not actually use robots, and just, having them understand patterns and coordinates and things like that. So that's been really rich. I really enjoy it. Kids are just amazing. I mean, of course, they come with all their complications and nuances and beautiful creativity. But I just find for myself, it's really interesting having to kind of share some ideas that I have that I've always worked with at an adult level, and interacting with adults and other educators, and bringing it down and trying to translate that to a 3-year-old and say, okay, this is the concept that I want you to walk away with. So that's been a huge learning. I've really enjoyed that. And then I'm doing a fair amount of mentoring. I'm on the ECIS mentoring group. And then on my side kind of project that I have really, my new passion is supporting senior citizens with digital literacy. So I'm working with 2 organizations as a volunteer here in Switzerland, and we're doing a lot of work with that. And that's just fascinating, because the digital divide and kind of, you forget how, if you don't have a baseline of digital skills, you can really feel disenfranchised and kind of sidelined.
Definitely.
And
So
I think
have you missed anything about being a tech director? And the second question is, I'm curious, have they ever tried to get you involved in meetings, or do you ever find yourself going, oh well, you could do this, and suggesting things, or are you just out of it?
Well, no, I haven't, because we have a wonderful group of we have a tech director and campus tech directors, and there's a really good group there. I'm in meetings, and of course it's a very collaborative environment, and I'm always happy to share. But you have to kind of be careful. Now, what I'm noticing is often I prefer being quiet and listening, because it's their vision, it's their workflow, and I'm just happy to support whatever there is at that level of being in the classroom and the teachers that I work with. I don't miss being a tech director. I absolutely love the experience. I feel very fortunate to have been able to do it. But my inbox is so small. I think this holiday, even though I've been away from it for 18 months, this holiday was really the first time, and I can't think of how many years, where I didn't feel I had to be checking things. I didn't have to. Even when you're on holiday as a school leader, you might have some downtime, and you might block out time and not do it, but that's always hovering over your head. And that hovering, I think, sometimes generates its own stress. So no, it's been a good transition. I have no complaints. I'm very appreciative of the experiences and the people that I've worked with, and the people that have been part of my professional journey. So no, I'm looking at 2024 in a positive light. And I'm just, for me, the big thing now is this whole idea of these elections. This is the first time in 30 years so many countries will be voting in elections. And one area that I'm really starting to spend more time on is about how kids read in a digital world, and how much in that reading strategy they're actually not reading deeply and critically.
Yeah.
And in tandem, this whole idea of misinformation, deep fakes, and
Yeah.
how we are siloed in our information. And personally, and I feel schools are not focusing enough on providing the tools, because most educators that are in classrooms today have not really been trained, or in their schooling had theoretical and pedagogic training on the idea of AI and how these powerful language models shift the way information is curated, what is truth, what is not. And so that's an area that I'm really hoping to develop and do more research, and really look in the venues that I have
Yeah.
opportunities at conferences to really amplify this idea of the misinformation. It'll be really interesting to see with these elections, because this will be the first time that all these different countries and these different politicians can really leverage ChatGPT-4.
Yeah, definitely. I don't have much to add to that. It's going to be an interesting times, definitely. No question about that. What yeah, what else? And I mean, I'm just curious about like what are your plans for, like what have you done? What else have you done in 2023? Travel? Have you anything interesting to report? I've got a few things, but I'm curious first of all what
I
you've been
did
doing
the
in.
Interrail. There's an Interrail ticket that, when I was 16, 17, living
Yeah.
in Europe, in Switzerland, we used to go interrailing. So my wife and I did that this summer, and that was awesome. We absolutely
Yeah.
loved it. Because I'm of a certain age, I got to get a really half price first class ticket, and it was great. We traveled all through southern, central, and northern Italy, and through Austria over 3 weeks. And yeah, and so that's kind of been the new thing, is we're going to try to leverage this Interrail. So we're looking to do a long trip to northern Norway by train. And train travel is great. It's a very relaxing way to travel. You can read, you can sleep, you can have a
Yeah, it's
couple
great.
drinks. Of course, you need to have a lot of time on your hand. But otherwise, no, just, moving back to my hometown after 30 years, I've been spending a lot of time getting to know the local areas, hiking, biking, and cross-country skiing, and skiing when I can. So that's been really the focus. It's funny when you're living abroad and you don't live at home, suddenly you rediscover your home, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know this is a great thing. And sometimes even just driving from the motorway down to where I live, you have a whole view on the Alps with the lake. And sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, I forgot about this. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
getting to know home again, which in itself can be a really interesting process, especially when, as many people that are listening to us often have to make that decision to go back home. And what is that like after so many years? Like, Dan, would you move back to the UK?
No, well, it's interesting you say that, because I'm having the same thing about the Czech Republic now. Because I've lived in Czech Republic longer than I lived where I grew up in Yorkshire. I lived there 18 years, and then I've been
Really?
19 years now. So for me,
How long have you
I'm
been in the Czech Republic?
been here about I came in 2004, so that's what
20
no,
years.
yeah, 20 years. Plus I did a year in 99, so really, yeah, over 20 years. So I'm really I'm really focusing on a few things now. First of all, it's weird. I've never felt like I was here kind of permanently, but now I've just kind of accepted we've bought a nice house. Our kids are, I mentioned it in a minute, the kids are in school here. So I'm really kind of feeling more settled here. So I'm really focusing on my Czech. I'm taking the exam to get Czech citizenship. So I've got to pass the language test. It's a B1 level, which I'm borderline. So I'm really focusing on Czech, focusing on getting more integrated with things. I mean, I have a lot of Czech friends, but they're people that speak English, really. So it's not. I'm
So
not
with your
as.
Czech community that you interact with on a social level, it's all in English.
Yeah, basically, yes, basically, and I'm really changing that now. I'm focusing on changing that. My wife speaks fluent Czech, um, and I want our kids to speak Czech. Our kids go to one of our sons just started at international school this year, and I'm already worried that he doesn't speak Czech that well, and I'm focused, because international schools, that's the kind of downside, isn't it? You can
Yeah,
really get a bit cut off from the
yeah.
local community. So I'm really pushing him on the Czech as well, because I want him to because he might end up spending his whole life here, and I want him to feel he speaks the language fluently as well.
Yeah, and I think that's often challenging, as in like in your situation where you and your wife are expatriates, but you've lived a long time and your wife speaks fluent Czech. But also, how do you integrate? Because I know where I live, there is a huge community of Anglophones and expatriates that have been here over 2, 3 generations.
Yep.
But I wouldn't say that often they're integrated within that expatriate community,
I am
but
definitely.
not with the local community. And I think that's, of course, that's something that you can do, but really integrating with the local community, like the Czech community, the language is going to be so key, right? I mean,
Yeah,
if you don't
exactly.
speak the language.
Exactly, and I understand it pretty well. And like I said, I've got a target now, and the citizenship, the language exams, it's a full day of tests. It's
Wow.
you have various written essay tests, 2 or 3 verbal ones. You have to pass a Czech culture exam. So there's quite a bit to it, and it's a good goal for me to have now. So I'm just trying to get a date. It's the dates are all full up for the first quarter of the year, so I'm just doing that, and that's kind of my big focus. And work wise, it's interesting. I travel quite a bit in 2023, and I'm going to focus more on Europe and the Middle East in terms of my more short trips this year. I think
Uh-huh.
I've got a business partner, James, who and it's great. He's in Asia, so he covers a lot of that. But
So you
I
kind
was
of can
in
split
Asia.
those.
Sorry, Joe.
You can split those regions, so James
A
can
little bit, yeah. We
concentrate
haven't.
on
I mean,
one.
we've done everything together, but a bit more. In terms of a face-to-face contact. Because I was there twice this year. Both times I was in Hong Kong and I was in Singapore, and it was great. I was just in Hong Kong before Christmas actually for 2 weeks, and I absolutely love Hong Kong. We talk about it quite a bit. Thought about living there many times, but it's a long trip. When you get out there. So you need to stay for. In my opinion, I like to stay for 2 weeks when I go out there, just because the hassle of getting there, it takes you a couple of days to recover, and then you can really focus on just meeting a lot of people.
Yeah, and those are long flights, and you have kids, and yeah,
Yeah.
that traveling thing is hard, I think, really hard.
Yeah, I mean, the other travel thing that was interesting was Saudi Arabia. We've talked about it on the pod, but I've been going there for the first time. Huge changes there, like you can't imagine. Like it's going to be the new China in terms of for international schools. What China's going down now for international schooling, but what it was, I mean, I've heard different numbers, but I mean, essentially over 700 international schools planned or in progress to be built there.
When you say international schools, you remember we've had this conversation and
Yeah.
we've had guests. Denry was with us, and we've had quite a few guests talk about this. Are you talking nonprofit international schools, or maybe like KAUST is part of the university system in
Yeah.
Jeddah? Are you talking those kind of schools? I'm just curious. What are you
No, I think
noticing?
the vast majority are for profit. I
Okay.
think, look, the vast majority of international schools are for profit. People aren't opening new non-profit international schools.
Yeah.
It happens.
No.
It happens here and there. It does
Yeah.
happen. We talked to the International School of Ostrava and other ones who've done it, but no, it's all pretty much almost all for profit. All expats, because I mean they're building this new city of Neom, which is 9 million people. They're doubling the size of Jeddah from 9 to 18. There's this city called the Line we've talked about. I don't know if you've seen the 200-kilometer long walls,
Yeah.
2 walls,
Yeah.
a monorail in between. It's kind of dystopian. So who knows if it's going to work out? They want to be the new Dubai. They want to be the sort of regional financial hub, and getting ready for the future with that oil. So the one thing's for sure, that in terms of the international school educators that want to go there to make some money, I mean, you go there as a teaching couple, you're going to save a lot of money. There's
Yeah.
a lot of it, just don't have all these distractions you have in a lot of places. You get, obviously, salaries are the highest in the world. I don't think anywhere has higher salaries than Saudi Arabia right now. So I've met a few people just going out there saying, we're going to be here for 3 years, 5 years, whatever the number is, and just save money. And
Yeah.
the kids have a great life there. It's a very Truman Show. You live in your kind of bubble. I was staying with Donovan up in KAUST, which is amazing. I mean, it's like a whole town. They've got great sports facilities, water sports
So it's like a
facilities.
self-contained environment that you
Yeah,
basically live all day in. You socialize and work, and you're not going
yeah.
out that much.
You would only leave if you maybe went to Jeddah, which is it's like an hour down the road. Then you might go there sometime on the weekend, but you wouldn't go there every weekend. I mean, you'd go weeks without ever leaving the. I say compound. It's like a small town. It's a
Yeah,
decent
I'm
size.
sure.
Kids can cycle everywhere, but it's not. It's definitely not for everybody. But it's What I think it is, though, it's the future of international schooling. I mean, that's where the growth is now, and it's going to be a huge growth.
And what's so amazing is to think culturally and, how when you think of Saudi Arabia 20, 30 years ago and how now, opening up, it's open to tourism, every half decent great soccer player, football player is hired, So the amount of money and just the way you're describing things is just the investment
Yeah.
power that's going into all this is phenomenal. And are these Saudi Arabian for-profit organizations that are creating the schools, or is it like Cognita, Nord Anglia, GEMS? Or are there new players that you're noticing?
I'm still learning about it. I mean, so Saudi Aramco has a big group of schools already. I know GEMS and Cognita are looking at it. There's lots of lot in progress from what I'm hearing. We've talked about it on the pod before, where you get the English private schools licensing their name with a
Yes.
partner with a local businessman. A lot of that is in place. There's various English schools, which is basically it's a local partner. The ones I've heard of, it seems to be local partner with foreign investors, foreign operators, things like that. But
Okay.
they're gonna. If you think the country's going to increase by say 20 million people more, they're all foreigners. The Saudis are not like reproducing at a higher rate than normal. They're all foreigners. So 20 million people, that's a lot of schools.
Yeah, that is a lot of schools. And it sounds like, as you were describing before, it's kind of that Dubai model where,
Yeah.
the biggest percentage of kind of the white collar workers often could be expatriates.
Yeah, definitely. But there's also schools like, Dubai is very segmented. You have schools for Filipinos, you have schools for Indians, so there's and Bahrain and these places have that as well. So there's going to be a lot of these sort of schools focusing on very sort of specific groups of people as well.
It's interesting that you bring that up. Over the holidays, we actually shared an article about in China now many of the international schools have to do the new security curriculum,
Yeah.
where the Chinese government is instituting a curriculum that's specific to the security and the data privacy, et cetera, of the country. And international schools, as I understand, just from the article, and it would be great to hear from somebody out in China how you might be impacted by that. That would
Yeah.
be a great pod. But just how that's starting to, change the dynamic of schools. And, next week we have Trey and Bridget. Bridget was in Khartoum and Trey is in Kiev today with an international school. And just that kind of those changes that happen in Saudi Arabia is a great example. Suddenly this whole shift and change. And as you said, in China, a new change because of some national laws is I think we forget how international schools in a lot of regions, it can be quite volatile and it can be
is.
quite unstable and unpredictable. And I think that's something that's always interesting to be mindful of. And I think I'm looking forward to sharing Trey and Bridget's story. But the Saudi Arabia is just amazing. The numbers that you're playing with, 20 million, 700 schools, that's a lot of teachers.
Yeah, exactly. And bearing in mind, all the news reports seem to be saying there's a teacher shortage looming, or already coming. I think it's a great time to be getting a job with an international school now. I think for people listening to this, starting their career, I think there's opportunities now to actually, that your skills are going to be in demand if you're a good educator, a good IT person, good whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think sometimes if they're new educators, the idea of Saudi Arabia often is a bit of that requires some thinking. I think often people, they have this idea of internet. I've been talking to a few people transitioning this year from different places, and they're like, no, I want to go to Europe. And I'm like, well, people in Europe stay a long time. There are different labor laws. And so that's always interesting. But I think your point's a really important one. The opportunities for educators, especially if you're comfortable moving to the Middle East, especially if there are going to be 700 schools, that's a fantastic.
Yeah, I think it'll end up being more, but yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it? Because the places people really want to go and live are often not the best paid places. Like a lot of people want to go in Spain. Salaries in Spain are not great. People want to go to Latin America.
High taxes.
Yeah, exactly. But you want to go to I mean, Hong Kong is a place probably that people want to go, and it's very well paid. I think that's kind of, and there's a few Asian places like that. Japan, I would say, is like that. Singapore as well, but most of the time it's, like people live in Thailand, but from what I understand, the salaries are not that high in Thailand compared to a lot of other countries, unless you work for a NIST or an ASB or something.
Yeah. I'm wondering if somebody has an interactive, intelligent map where you could hover over a country and it could tell you this is the average salary with benefits for international schools. It'd be interesting. I know you can look.
Something like that. I'm sure I saw something from ISC about that. We should get them on again.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dan, another year of podcasts, and I think it's been just great. We've had such great guests. The thing that I'm always so impressed and so appreciative is many of these guests actually charge when they go out and work with schools and stuff. And people have been extremely generous and say, sure, we'll come and talk for an hour. And that I want to thank all our guests out there, and that how much we appreciate that. And also that you're always so generous with the show notes and the resources that you send out. So that feels good. And I've learned so much. Every time we have somebody on, I'm like, damn, I'm learning here.
Oh no, I learned from talking to you, John, as well. But I think the
Likewise.
thing is, it's kind of a hack, isn't it? Like if you want to meet, we could, like, I'm not saying everybody would come on our show involved in the education world, but they would at least reply to our email, So having a podcast is a real hack to get to in front of a lot of people. They'll return your call, or they'll return your email, and there's a very good chance they'll speak to you.
Yeah, and I've noticed that when people are on our podcast, if you look at LinkedIn, I looked at LinkedIn because we have that LinkedIn group with International Schools Podcast. It's interesting how they then comment and then share to their cohort. And that also is an amplification for them in their craft and their expertise. So I think, people appreciate that when they come on, there is an audience, and that audience is you listening today. That is very engaged, and that I think is really, people appreciate that, to have the space to talk about what they get. And I'd be curious, I know Pete Kennedy actually, we never said that. Pete Kennedy from Search Associates was writing to us a few times this year saying how many of his candidates actually had listened to the podcast,
right,
and had listened to Pete Kennedy and some other people that had talked about recruitment. We had Ashley and Kelly, two educators. And so that's always interesting to see that, people listen, and then based on the learning from the guests, they then go and do something or take advantage of that.
That's great. And I've now been recognized twice by my voice when I've been speaking to people, and I'm like, I know you from somewhere. And it's happened to me twice at Air Course and at ECIS, which is great.
That's great. That's great. And it's funny because people will, I've had an occasion where somebody says, I recognize your voice, but maybe they haven't seen my face. Are you on that podcast? You're like, yeah. So that's interesting.
I think that's the thing for anyone doing a podcast. It's like it's a long game, like it's not, it takes, we it's growing. It's like a flywheel. We're getting momentum, and it gets easier to talk to people because now there's a reasonable chance they might have heard it. If they've heard of a podcast, then they're definitely interested to talk because they know that, it's in their circle. I think so.
Yeah.
I think definitely if you're getting into this, it's a long game. I think the other thing, John, I'm thinking about how we can improve the pod, and please, if you listen to this, messages of any suggestions.
Yes,
I want
please.
to level up our tech game a bit. I think I'm already looking into how we can do. I want us to both get sort of the audio and everything, and the not talking over each other, which is kind of the technique. It arises from out not wearing headphones and things. So I think I'd like to get our tech game leveled up a bit in next year, so we can take it to the next level a little bit.
I'm all for that. Let's get some fancy equipment. Love toys.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to figure that one out. And I think as well, I don't know. I mean, what you said? More students. I think more students. I think would be great.
I think I would like to hear some The problem is with students, of course, you have the whole GDPR. They have to, that there's some admin on the back end that you have to do. But I would like to hear about some students. What are they doing? What do they think? What is 2024? Because these children that are in our schools have such rich learning experiences. They're surrounded by amazing professionals, the resources and the activities and the content and the curriculums that they have access to is just, top class.
Yep.
How are they now thinking about their lives and their role, and what, for example, these existential threats that we mentioned, AI and climate change as one, and of course the geopolitics. But I think that's something that I like. And I like your idea of having kind of regional panels, because I think it's always interesting, even if you're not living in the Middle East, hearing from Middle Eastern colleagues and educators and international professionals, that can be really interesting, as their points and perspectives that might be something that you can transfer to your own context.
Definitely, John. John, I think it's probably a good place to leave it. We're almost
It
an hour,
is.
which has been a great Sunday chat. First of all, John, have a great new year. I wish you and your family health and
Likewise.
happiness, and the same to everyone listening to the pod.
Yeah, and to you too, all the best to your family, and thank you. Do message us. I think, Dan just threw out a couple ideas. We're going to up our tech game. You're gonna see us with these big headphones on our
Yeah,
heads,
exactly.
and mics that take half of our face. I'm joking.
I've
But
already got that.
LinkedIn group, message us, feedback. And if you do listen to us on the Apple podcast or Spotify, do leave a little rating, a review. That's always appreciated. Thank you so much for your support. And Dan, we'll see you at the next episode.
Cheers, John. All the best.
All the best.